Good morning, guys. It's Thursday. It's about 11 o'clock. I had to stop at my wife's office this morning and look at a bumper job for her assistant. She scuffed her rear bumper with a bicycle pedal for her boy. No big deal. Just hoping I could save her a few bucks. She got a pretty low quote from a reputable body shop here in town, so we'll see what happens. At any rate, I'll show you where I'm at with the D-Max. Okay, yesterday's video we had these patches in with the 3M Marine Adhesive Sealant 5200 on them. And the silver you see is 3M Weld Through Primer, which I don't need to have that on here for welding purposes. It is also a corrosion protectant. Now this isn't a 100% job back here. I scaled as much rust off as I could with the needle scaler and wire wheel to the areas that I could reach. We're going to oil undercoat this whole area once the truck's painted anyway, but I wanted to get something a little extra. And that weld through primer is a cold galvanized type material, so it should help a little bit, but I've shown this before. There it is. It's expensive as hell. It's like 40 bucks a can, unless you get body shop prices, which I don't. I pay retail on it, unfortunately. So anyway, I've got to, this is the passenger side here, I've got to remake that lip out of some sheet metal. I think I have enough scrap 18 gauge from the what I cut off of the patch panels to make a nice heavy lip for that. And I didn't spray a bunch of weld through primer on here because I'm going to have to weld. I think I'm going to cut it out at that seam, so I'm going to make a template, or at least clamp a piece of metal up there and draw on the back of it with a Sharpie so I have a way to cut it out. And we're going to get that welded in and get some weld through primer on that, and then I'll jump over to the other side and we'll start tacking away at that. Greg Porter made a comment to me about the warpage that I will incur on this side bed panel, either side. That's a lot of real estate, boys, so you got to be super careful. Weld and let it cool, otherwise it'll look like a washboard when you're done, and it may still warp, but we're going to try and minimize all that, because when it's all said and done and the welds are metal finished down, I will go along this seam and tap down that seam so it's low, so when I mud it, hopefully we don't get any warpage, you know, way up into here. If I do, I'm in deep shit. So I got to do my due diligence and be very careful with that as I weld it. I had a brain fart last night on how I might keep the top of this panel when it butts up here from flopping inwards, and I think is what I'm going to do. Maybe at each corner, and maybe one here on that side, and then maybe 2 or 3 spots in the middle. I am going to plug weld a little lip on there just to keep it from flopping in, because like I explained in a previous video, if you watched it, that I can reach up in here from that area down there and that area down there. The filler neck's kind of flopped off to the side, but I can reach those areas to seal up all of that goodness behind there, so that should be okay to go. So I'm going to get to getting here and try and fabricate something so that this will go up there in there without too much trouble. So I'll talk to you guys in a bit later. Okay, guys, the weld through primer is all dried up for my corrosion protection back in this fender tub area. And what I'm going to do now, and what I want to show you, I got to get a little inspection mirror and a light. But I want to show you something. If I can get the light to set for me. Okay. Now I don't know if it's going to show in the camera here. I think it's going to be angry with me. Okay. Basically, what I'm trying to show you, and I think maybe we can see it, let's try over here. Backlit would be better. Let me try and flip this light around so that it's not shining right directly in there. But I'm trying to show you, you need to make both sides of your panel you're welding to shiny clean. Because if you don't, there you go, you can sort of see that. There's some crust up there, but I've got about an inch away. If you look, you got to look in the mirror. If that crust is right up on that lip and you start to weld that, you will be blowing holes everywhere. I don't know if this will work or not. It's hard to get it perfect, but you got to get as much of that crap off of there as possible on the back side, or it will cause you lots of trouble. So I used a combination of tools. I used the 3M rust wheel where I could get it in there on the die grinder, another die grinder with a flapper disc, and a third die grinder with a little baby wire wheel on it. So I'm going to put you guys on the stand here in a second. I'll show you what I did to this panel so that I can get it to sit up there. I punched my holes. You can see where the metal paint's ground off around those holes. Those are my plug weld holes to the inner fender tub from this outer skin. And I welded these little guys, just tacked them on the outside so that I can set that panel up there and clamp it and have something to hold against so that this gets welded into place properly. So I'm going to put you on the stand and we're going to clamp this up, and I'm going to show you my fitment. It's not ideal, but it's my first time ever fitting a set of these giant bedside patches in. Normally is the way I do them. I just repair the affected area to prolong them, because most people don't want to pay for the time it takes to put one of these in. If the side skins for the bed weren't so expensive, I'd rather change that, but it's an additional cost on material for sure. So we've got bright shiny metal on both sides of my panel and on my bedside itself. I've already monkeyed back and forth with this. And we may still need to do some tweaking. They're not a perfect fit, but they're not bad. Just got to make sure I have a little bit of gappage everywhere so that I'm not in an interference type situation. Now, bring you guys, let me show you what I got here. This is not ideal, but again, this is the best fitment I could get out of these. Ideally, that's about the largest gap I would like to deal with. Most of this is, I got to realign it because I'm hitting right there. I don't like them quite that big. But luckily I got a spot back here where I'm pretty close, and I can get a tack, and I can stack some tacks little by little to get that to draw in. And I will take a flat bladed screwdriver and hold it like that to hold these panels dead even the best of my ability. so that this panel stays straight. So that's where I'm at for now. I'm gonna fuss with this for another minute here, and then I'll bring you back when I'm ready to do a couple of tacks. That's probably a good solid 2 hours worth of welding, because you can't sit there and weld continuous on it or the panel will just be destroyed. So I'll shut you off and I'll turn you back on here in a minute. Alright guys, I'll show you where I'm at here. I've got this tacked in several spots. You can see the little tack welds here. We're going to focus. That's what you want. That's taken me about a half an hour to jump around and do that. I got to work on my big gap down here at the bottom. What I wanted to make sure is that this line right here is close on both sides. This side's not quite as pretty. It's just a little off, but I can beat that in and make that work. Funny thing is, you'll never see it once the flares are on, but I know what it'll look like when they're off, so I want it to be right. And once I get a little closer to where I have these things welded on, like say I get a tack here and a tack here, I will grind those little tacks off of those little flares that I put on there that are helping me out, my extra set of hands, as it were, because I don't know any way to clamp this, other than to have flanged it and put Clecos in it. And we know how the flange went yesterday. If you listen to my explanation of that, I was not happy. So we're just going to go at it like this. I'm going to take a break here. It's about 20 after 1. I'm going to get the heat going for a little bit, and I'm going to eat my lunch here. Got myself a nice little picnic. It's pretty much what I eat every day, a bologna sandwich and some Cool Ranch Doritos and Powerade. Drink a lot of that. So, alright, I'm going to sit here and eat my lunch real quick and warm it back up in here, and then I'm going to get this tacked the rest of the way in, and I'm going to jump over to the other side and start fabbing up that one. So all I have to do is fill in the blanks on the welds. I just don't want to warp this panel, so I'll talk to you guys in a bit later. Alright guys, I'm going to show you how I do these welds. I got you zoomed in. You're not going to be able to see without a welding lens what the weld itself looks like, but give you a little insight on where this welder's tuned to. This is a Miller Auto Set 180, and it is at about 2.5 on the heat range and just short of 40 on the wire speed. And that is creating a weld. Focus. Doesn't like that kind. It looks like that. You don't want real tall, boogered up welds, because that's more grinding and more heat you're going to have to generate to metal finish that panel. So here we go. I'm just jumping all over the place doing these welds so that I don't have them stacked on top of one another. Got my body hammer here. To try and even up that metal a little bit. You don't want to be pushing on this when you're heating it, because it'll ripple the hell out of it. Torch at about a 45-degree angle, like so, and pretty close. You don't want to go straight in, because you will blow right through it. So maybe 45 to 60 degrees is a good starting point, along with those heat settings on that welder with the 023 wire, the little wire, with a matching 023 liner and an 023 contact tip. Gas flow about just short of 20, I would say. Yeah, we're just short of 20. Let's see if you guys are even a shot in on where I'm at. Okay. And you need about 3/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch wire stick out for sure. And that's all the longer you need to go for. Some of these wider gaps are going to be trickier. So we're going to weld a little bit. After every weld that I do, I take the side cuts and I cut that little ball of slag off the end of the wire, and it starts fast and clean. Some of these real close gaps, I can cut my wire speed down to about 35. Again, these are what works for me. That doesn't mean your welding style or your welder will do the same, but if you have this particular welder, that'll get you kind of close. It's just a long process stacking all these welds. The other thing that helps with the little wire, keep your the lead to your electrode as straight as possible, because the easier it is for that drive roller to feed that wire through that liner to your gun tip, the more consistent your welds will be. Now I'm starting here and there to stack my welds. It always helps, I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again, to start in the last third or in the center of an existing weld when you start connecting them, because that old weld will absorb that heat. The heat is definitely the enemy when you're welding sheet metal. You don't want excess heat buildup. So I'll do a dozen or so tacks here, and you can see how long this is going to take. It's a lot of real estate to cover without doing too many welds on top of one another. When you're welding a continuous bead, the noise you should hear should sound like slowly frying bacon or a slowly frying egg. If it's sitting there going zzz, then you've got too much heat for what you're doing. The reason I'm starting to stack some of these welds down toward the camera is that's the end with the biggest gap, and I don't want to blow through it. I've blown through in a couple of spots in the radius, but there was still a little scale there that I just couldn't get off. There's not a lot I could do about that. The other thing, when you have a larger gap, if you take the torch, electrode, whatever you want to call it, torch is more for TIG welding, but if you take that, and I always weld two-handed, I'm not steady enough to do it one-handed, and you swing that real quick with the wire speed sped up, it'll bridge that gap, and you'll get a tack in it, so you'll have something to build onto. A lot of guys would disagree with me that you don't need to cut that little ball of slag off the end of your wire, but for me it seems to help quite a bit. miss there. I welded into my new panel, but I didn't catch the old one. I'll come back to that when it cools off. Sometimes when you don't have a very large gap and you have your wire speed too fast, it starts to bounce, like you heard that go like that. Because you've got just excessive wire piling up in one spot and not enough heat to melt it. That was a miss. Tried to stack it on another weld. Couldn't see it. Got a little hole in it too. I'll do a couple more here and I'll shut you guys off. Basically, the way I learned how to weld sheet metal was to watch other people do it, and just a lot of practice. You can't just, unless you're some sort of natural, you're not going to jump into welding sheet metal and be an expert on it. Alright, we'll do two more. And then I'll set you guys free here for a little bit. I'll do one in between that one and that one. Now, for me, this is what really gets difficult when I'm trying to hold the two panels level. You can hear we've got a contact there, a pretty decent one at that. Now normally when these welds cool, it actually shrinks the metal around it. So in theory you shouldn't have a bunch of real high spots. However, you'll find that once you metal finish this, you grind the welds down, that you will have some. I'll do one more here, decide where I want to do it. I'm going to go back on top of this one. And I actually made the connection. Okay. So that's where we're at for now. You can see I still have a pretty healthy gap. And let's pick a good example. Let's look at this weld right here in the center of the screen. That's about how far the heat should go. So in theory, the warpage shouldn't go more than a little ways off of that. You don't want, if you're getting a ring the size of a quarter around that, you probably got your heat set way too high, and chances are you're already blowing through it and you already know that. So alright, that's 12 minutes. We're going to cut it loose there and I'll show you what it's like when it's all welded up later. Okay guys, end of the day Thursday update. It is 5 till 6 and I had about 3 hours in this panel here. But it's all welded in, and I've turned all the lights out in here earlier and put a flashlight up behind it to check for pinholes, which I had a couple spots here and down here, which was really giving me trouble, and a couple over here, which was an area that gave me trouble, and I'm going to check it again tomorrow just to make sure. But remember, I talked about warpage in this panel, and we were going to try and minimize that by running short, quarter to half-inch beads after I got it tacked. And the stacking tack welds method is a good method, and I did 90% of it that way, but I did run some short beads because this is 18 gauge steel, but we are out in the middle of a panel. So I took the DA with some 80 grit along the outside just to see where it was going to bridge and where it was going to miss. And you know where it seemed to have warped it the worst? Was right here and right here. And I can dig that. That's not a problem. This panel, it feels fairly smooth. And you know, if I have to come down all the way to this body line right here, I'm cool with that. But we only have a few little dinks throughout here. A little bit longer one right there, but nothing horrendous. I'm going to come back tomorrow and check for pinholes one last time and do the rest of my metal finishing on my welds, so that's low enough. And then I'm going to strip the paint back probably a good 4 inches away from this whole thing, so that all my body work is going to be in that rippled metal, so that I can check for all that and make sure that's all good to go. So tomorrow's goal is to make sure there's no pinholes left in this, and get a wipe of Duraglass on it and jump to the other side of the truck and get the other panel in tomorrow, and then it'll be body work this weekend, hopefully. These are taking maybe a touch longer than what I expected them to take, but not too bad. It's just a lot of real estate to be welding. It's a lot of tacks and a lot of waiting. And I guess I could have had the other panel fitted up on the other side. The problem is dragging the welder back and forth from side to side. I mean, you just run your tail off all day long doing that. So this is the way I did it, and it turned out all right. I'm pretty happy with it. It could have been a hell of a lot worse. The side of this truck could have looked like a washboard, and I think I did a pretty good job minimizing it and containing that heat. Some guys will actually take a blowgun and blow their welds off as they go, and I don't like that kind. I let it cool naturally. I've done it both ways, and normally when you quench something and cool it that fast, it shrinks, and the quick shrinking makes the warpage worse on a big panel like this. That's my opinion. Take it for what it's worth, but I mean, all in all, not too bad. So that's it for today, guys. I could have brought you along for the whole job, but you would have been on a 3-hour video of watching me stack tack welds and then grind on this. So that's no fun. That's pretty self-explanatory stuff. You've seen me do it before, and we'll catch you tomorrow. That's it for today. Have a good night, guys.